Assuming you haven't been living under a rock, you know that the real estate market has been on a crazy ride for the past 2 years, and Georgia is no different. If you've seen the headlines recently, well, you would think the sky is falling and we are heading for a housing market crash. We see those headlines everywhere, and it's showing up on your nightly news. So, is Georgia's housing market going to sink this year? Hi, I'm Sarah Maslowski with KeyPoint Homes Group. Our team serves all of North Georgia, and we help people relocate from all over the United States and the world. So I hate to break it to you, but not so fast when it comes to the Georgia housing market. Let's look at 2 reasons why Georgia's real estate market won't exactly tank. First, the supply of homes available for sale needed to sustain a normal real estate market is approximately about 6 months. Anything more than that is an overabundance, and it's going to cause prices to fall. Anything less than that is a shortage, which leads to continue price appreciation. That's why we've seen this wild, crazy market over the past 2 years. We have not had that supply. So again, let's take a look back at the housing market historically. So when we look back at 2008, that's not in, so many people's distant memory, as many of you know. And when we take a look at this graph, what it shows is that there were too many homes for sale between 2007 and 2010. Many of those, as you remember, those were short sales and foreclosures, and that caused prices to tumble. We had way more supply and not enough demand. But when we look at today's numbers, there's still a huge shortage of inventory, which is causing home prices to go up and causing that home price appreciation. Inventory is nothing like where we were the last time. We are experiencing an extreme shortage of houses, not only nationwide, but right here in our area. When we take a look at the metro Atlanta area, inventory in June was at 1.7 month supply of inventory, well below a balanced market. And when we look at historic supplies, well, we haven't been in a balanced market since the lead up to the housing crash in 2007. And as you can see, in the years leading up to that housing crash, inventory was far, far, far above where we are currently at right now. Back then, they had years worth of 4-month supply of inventory. So the key point here is that prices are rising because there's a healthy demand for home ownership at the same time of having that limited supply of inventory. Another reason why the Georgia housing market isn't sinking is because mortgage lending standards today are nothing like they were last time. Prior to the housing bubble, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan. It was much, much, much easier to get a mortgage back then than it is today. Here is a graph showing that the mortgage volume issued to purchasers with a credit score less than 620 during the housing market boom, and then you see in the years afterwards the volume then. So this graph kind of helps shows, the element of why mortgage standards are nothing like they were in the past. Buyers who got a mortgage over this past decade are much more qualified than they were in the years leading up to the crash. You know this if you've bought a home in the last 10 years. What they require, their minimum down payment, the credit scores, all of that has drastically changed. So what are we seeing here in the Georgia housing market? More and more home sellers are having to adjust their selling price due to the pressures of rising interest rates. You've seen the headlines. Last year, interest rates were in the 3% range, and this year we are creeping up on 6%. Now, when we look at how that is affecting the local home market here, the median sales price of newly listed homes nationwide is down 1.5% from an all-time high it reached this past spring. And a record high number of sellers actually dropped their asking price nationally during that 4-week period that ended at the end of June. Now, when we take a look at the metro Atlanta area of Georgia, we see that the average sales price of home in June was $434,000, comparing that to just $430,000 in May. So not a decrease in sales prices, but if we go back a couple of months and we look at the median sales price of a home in April was $411,000, and then go back to January, that was $375,000. That is a huge jump, and you can also see that those prices are slowing down. We only went from 404 to 411 from May to June. And so we are seeing home price appreciation slow down. And you have to imagine that buyers everywhere are breathing a sigh of relief. The relief for buyers that's also showing up in the cooling down of bidding wars. So the average sales price to list price, so how much the home was listed for and then what it actually sold for, in June was right at 102%. And if we go back and look at May, it was almost 103%. So a slight smidgen of a decrease. And you have to take into account that this data is reporting on a huge metro area. We are seeing a dramatic decrease in multiple offer situations with many of our clients in the areas that we serve that are a little bit more in the North Georgia area, and yet it's still very, very competitive with multiple offers in areas like Suwannee, Alpharetta, Cumming, and Johns Creek. Now, another great sign for buyers is rising inventory levels across the metro Atlanta area. Remember that 1.7 months of supply of inventory that we currently had that we talked about earlier in the video? Well, take a look at this graph. This shows you how much inventory has increased over the past couple of months. From this graph, you can tell that buyers are starting to get more options. With more options, that leads to decreased bidding wars on the houses that we just talked about. When you put that together, this coupled with decreased demand in the market due to rising interest rates, some buyers have exited out of the market. Buyers are getting a bit of good news. And speaking of good news, at the time of filming this video, interest rates are hovering just below 6%, and a couple of weeks ago, they were hitting in the 6s. And of course, when you work with great agents like us who work with great lenders, we have a variety of really great financing opportunities. Your interest rate could be much lower. One of our preferred lenders that we work with has an excellent mortgage product that is scoring most of our buyers rates in the 4.5% range. The key point is, when looking at everything as a whole, a majority of experts agree we're not in a housing bubble and we do not expect to see the Georgia housing market sink. That's because home price growth is backed by a really strong housing market fundamentals, and lending standards are much tighter today. Of course, if you are thinking of making a move to the metro Atlanta area, you have to reach out to my team and I so that we can help you find your dream home. In the meantime, make sure you are checking out these videos to give you more information.